Have you ever noticed something strange about the creation story in Genesis? If you read closely, there seems to be two different accounts of how humans were created, and they don't quite match up. Let me explain. In the first chapter of Genesis, verses 26 through 27, it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness.' So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." Here, man and woman are created together, equally and at the same time. But in the second chapter, we get a very different story. Genesis 2:18 through 22 describes how God created Adam first, then decided later that Adam needed a companion. This time, God puts Adam to sleep, takes one of his ribs, and uses it to form Eve. So which is it? Were man and women created simultaneously, or was woman created later from man's rib? This apparent contradiction puzzled ancient rabbis, and to resolve it, they developed a fascinating piece of folklore, one that introduces a figure entirely missing from the Bible itself. According to this tradition, there was another woman, created at the same time as Adam. She was his equal, but things didn't go as planned. Her name was Lilith. And that's where her story begins, a tale of rebellion, exile, and transformation that has captured imaginations for centuries. Let's take a closer look at who Lilith really was, where her story comes from, and why she still matters today. Lilith's story as Adam's first wife comes from the alphabet of Ben-Sira, a satirical Jewish text from the early medieval period. According to this account, Lilith was created at the same time and from the same earth as Adam. Unlike Eve, who was fashioned later from Adam's rib, Lilith was meant to be Adam's equal, but this equality quickly led to conflict. The story describes a heated argument between Lilith and Adam over their roles in their relationship. Adam wanted dominance, but Lilith refused to submit. She argued, "We are equal to each other in as much as we were both created from the earth." This claim of equality didn't sit well with Adam, who insisted she lie beneath him during sex, a clear demand for submission. Lilith, however, wasn't having it. In her frustration, she uttered the ineffable name of God and fled the Garden of Eden. Her act of rebellion is not just a simple refusal to submit to Adam. It's an extraordinary assertion of her autonomy and equality. By speaking the ineffable name of God, she wields divine power typically reserved for the holiest of acts. In Jewish tradition, the name of God is sacred and must not be spoken lightly. Lilith's use of it demonstrates her deep connection to the divine and her willingness to use that connection to break free from what she saw as an unjust situation. This act wasn't just a rebellion against Adam. It was a defiance of the patriarchal order that placed Adam above her. It showed that Lilith saw herself not as Adam's subordinate, but as his equal, fully entitled to the same agency and authority. After invoking God's name, she flees Eden and goes to the shores of the Red Sea, a location often associated with desolation and the supernatural in ancient Jewish thought. The Red Sea in this story symbolizes both exile and transformation. It's a liminal space, away from the ordered world of Eden, but also a place where Lilith begins to embrace her new identity. According to the alphabet of Ben-Sira, it's here that Lilith becomes associated with demons. This isn't just a punishment, but also a redefinition of who she is. Outside the boundaries of Eden, Lilith is no longer merely a human woman. She becomes something otherworldly, a figure of both fear and power. Lilith was thought to prey on newborn children, particularly in the first few days after birth. This belief likely stems from the ancient fears surrounding high infant mortality rates, which were often attributed to supernatural causes. Lilith became a personification of these fears, especially during the vulnerable period before a child was officially named or circumcised in the Jewish tradition. The alphabet of Ben-Sira explains her role. She became a demon who strangled babies in their cribs. God, unwilling to let Adam be alone, sends 3 angels, Sinoi, Sansinoi, and Semengaloth, to bring Lilith back. These angels represent divine authority and the attempt to restore order. They confront her and demand her return, but she refuses, even in the face of divine messengers. Lilith's refusal is another act of defiance, showing that she values her freedom more than the comfort or protection of Eden. At this point, she has fully embraced her independence, even though it comes with significant consequences. However, the story doesn't end there. Lilith makes a pact with the angels. She agrees not to harm children who bear the names of these 3 angels on protective amulets. The story from the alphabet of Ben-Sira may have started as a satire, but it established a narrative for Lilith that took on a life of its own. She became a symbol of defiance, independence, and exile. It's not hard to see why her story resonates today. The Zohar, one of the foundational texts of Jewish mysticism, offers another dimension to Lilith's character. Here she's portrayed as a demonic seductress, a being of lust and destruction who preys on men and endangers women during childbirth. The Zohar describes her as wandering the earth at night, tempting men to sin, and even taking their seed to create demonic offspring. One passage says, "She wanders about at night, vexing the sons of men and causing them to defile themselves." This depiction transforms Lilith from a rebellious woman into a symbol of chaotic, untamed sexuality. In the patriarchal context of ancient and medieval Jewish thought, she represented a fear of women who claimed power over their own bodies and desires. At the same time, her connection to childbirth and infant mortality reflects real societal fears. Infant death was tragically common, and Lilith became a supernatural explanation for this devastating phenomenon. The Zohar also connects Lilith to Samael, a demonic figure sometimes identified as the angel of death. Together they form a dark counterpart to Adam and Eve, representing the shadow side of creation, chaos and destruction as opposed to order and life. Lilith isn't just confined to folklore. Her name appears in some translations of the Bible, specifically in Isaiah 34:14. This verse describes a desolate, cursed land inhabited by strange creatures. The King James Version translates the Hebrew word Lilith as screech owl, but some modern translations, like the Revised Standard Version, use the term Lilith, connecting her to her folkloric identity as a night demon. The verse reads, "The wild beast shall meet with hyenas, the satyr shall cry to his fellow. Indeed, Lilith shall settle there, and find for herself a place of rest." The context of this verse paints Lilith as a being of the wilderness, chaos, and desolation, a fitting portrayal for someone who left Eden to live on her own terms. The use of Lilith ties her to the concept of night and danger, reinforcing her role as a nocturnal predator in later Jewish thought. This biblical connection grounds her story in the theological imaginations of ancient Israel, while leaving plenty of room for later reinterpretations. To truly understand Lilith, we need to look at her ancient origins. Her name and characteristics are strongly connected to Lilith, a class of female demons in Mesopotamian mythology. The Lilith were associated with the wind and the night, and they were thought to roam desolate places, preying on men, pregnant women, and infants. One Akkadian incantation describes Lilith as the one who flies in through the windows and disturbs the household. The Mesopotamian Lilith were often depicted with bird-like features, a connection that aligns with the owl imagery in Isaiah 34:14. This suggests that the Jewish Lilith inherited traits from these earlier myths. As these ancient stories were absorbed into Jewish folklore, Lilith became a uniquely Jewish figure, combining elements of rebellion, danger, and the supernatural. The Babylonian Talmud offers another perspective on Lilith. Here she's mentioned not as Adam's wife, but as a dangerous nocturnal entity. One well-known warning reads, "It is forbidden for a man to sleep in a house alone, lest Lilith seize him." This reflects Lilith's role as a seductress and a predator of the vulnerable. Men alone at night were seen as particularly susceptible to her temptations, reinforcing her connection to sin and forbidden sexuality. This depiction, combined with her role as a threat to newborns and pregnant women, made Lilith a figure of fear and caution in Jewish tradition. So, why does the story of Lilith still matter today? At first glance, her story seems like an ancient cautionary tale, a warning against rebellion and unruly women. But when you dig deeper, she becomes much more than that. Lilith represents duality, freedom and danger, autonomy and exile, power and isolation. She's a mirror for the human struggle between individuality and belonging, between submission and defiance. For some, she's a villain, a demon who embodies chaos and destruction. For others, she's a symbol of empowerment, a woman who refused to accept an unequal role, even at the cost of paradise. Her story has been reclaimed by feminists, writers, and artists as a narrative of defiance against patriarchal norms. She's become a cultural icon, representing the fight for equality and the courage to demand respect, even when the consequences are steep. What makes Lilith truly fascinating is her complexity. She's not just a rebellious wife, a demon, or a feminist symbol. She's all of those things and more. Her story invites us to question the boundaries between good and evil, chaos and order, and myth and reality. She shows us how stories evolve over time, reflecting the fears, values, and aspirations of the societies that tell them. Lilith's story may have started in ancient texts, but it hasn't ended. She lives on in literature, art, and popular culture, a reminder of the power of myth to shape how we see the world and ourselves. There's so much to unpack with Lilith. Do you see her as a villain, a hero, or something in between? If you liked the video, of course, please remember to like and subscribe. Let me know anything else that you want me to cover, any ancient folklore, other forms of mysticism. Just let me know in the comments. Until next time.